Chapter 2, The Magnificent Arab. When Milly woke up, it took her a few seconds to remember where she was. Cheery sunlight shone through holes in the tin walls and made patterns on the floor and the walls. The creepy sounds of the night seemed a world away. Mum was still asleep beside her, but Dad was already up and busy outside. Milly crept out of the mosquito net and went over to Sam's mattress. "Sam, wake up!" She shook him hard. Then she gave Jake a small kick. "Wake up, sleepyheads! Wait till you hear this. We've got lions." That did it. The two boys sat bolt upright in bed, their eyes round and big. Milly gave a long, low moan. The boys looked at her as if she'd gone mad. "That's how they sounded. You should have heard them." "True, Milly?" Jake asked. "You're not kidding us?" "Nah, and if you weren't such sleepyheads, you would have heard them yourselves." Then she told them about the lion park. Jake stared at her with wide eyes. "Wow! Imagine if one escaped. What would we do?" "I'd shoot it with my bow and arrow," said Sam. "Don't be stupid," said Milly. "That wouldn't stop a flea. And anyway, your bow's broken." Sam glared at her. "Well, I'll fix it today. Me and you, Jake? Want to help me fix it?" "Sure. Will you make me one too, Sam?" "Yep," said Sam, who loved making things. "I reckon we need to make a heap more arrows too. I saw some great turkey feathers yesterday." "Well, I'll help you," said Milly. "We're going to need to put the feathers on properly if we're going to try some lion hunting." Sam and Jake scrambled out of bed and threw on some old clothes. Sam found his army belt and pulled it tight around his waist. He attached his army water bottle and Swiss army knife, clipped on his compass, and shoved his latest wooden sword down behind the belt. He found his bow and then slung the leather quiver over his back. It was a bit short for the arrows. Next time he'd make it a bit longer. Jake pulled on his coon hat. Mum had brought it back from Colorado. When she'd given it to him, she'd teased him, saying that the man in the shop had said he hadn't been able to find a girlfriend until he got his first coon hat. Girlfriend? Yuck! 7-year-old Jake couldn't think of anything worse. He turned around and carefully climbed backwards down the ladder from the loft. The main room of the barn was piled high with boxes and furniture. Dad had made a small corridor through it so they could reach the ladder up the loft. "Right, team," he said at breakfast. "Today we'll try and get the beds set up in the loft and clear a bit of this room. If we can find the chest of drawers amongst it all, we'll take them up as well." "I don't know where to begin," said Mum. "Look at it all. Who would have thought one family could have so much stuff?" "Half the boxes are full of your trinkets," complained Dad, but his eyes were twinkling. "What are trinkets?" asked Sam. "Junk." Dad winked at Sam and then jumped when Mum made a poke at his ribs. Milly ran outside when she heard the unmistakable sound of a horse neighing. A few minutes later she dashed back into the barn. "Come and watch this," she shouted. Everyone filed outside. A beautiful white Arab horse stood with his head arched in the neighbour's paddock. He nickered when he saw them and tossed his head. Milly took off, sprinting down the length of the fence. With a snort and a fling of his head, the horse began to trot beside her on the other side, lifting his feet high and proud. Milly ran faster, and the horse began to canter along the fence line, tail high in the air. When she reached the end, Milly spun around and began to run back again as fast as she could. The horse shook his mane and galloped up towards his audience. Mum laughed and clapped her hands. "He's magnificent," she shouted. Milly clutched her sides, her chest heaving. "That'll get you fit for soccer," said Dad. "Isn't he wonderful, Mum?" she panted. Mum nodded, gazing at the horse as he stood watching them. His nostrils flared. "He's magnificent," she said again. "He looks like one of Ben-Hur's white Arabs. You know, the ones in the chariot race." Milly nodded, her eyes glowing. "I used to dream of owning a horse like that when I was your age," said Mum, and her eyes shone too. "OK, team," said Dad. "The chariot race is finished. Let's get started. There's a whole barn of trinkets to be unpacked." By lunchtime, they'd found all but one of the beds and most of the mattresses. Dad organised 2 teams and got Ellie and Mum setting up the single beds, while Kate and Josiah started setting up the bunks. "They're so jolly heavy," moaned 17-year-old Josiah as he wrestled with part of the solid Rimu timber bunks. "The sooner we get our earthquake protection up, the better," said Dad. Jacob danced around with excitement. His nickname was Flippity Gibbet. Dad said he had ants in his pants. "They're so cool," he shouted. "I bag sleeping in the top bunk. I want the part where the rats chewed." Mum shuddered just at the mention of the word. Milly laughed. All the kids liked one of the pieces of recycled timber that Dad had used when he'd made the bunks. It looked like a giant rat had nibbled its way along the wood, looking for something juicier to chew. Nana had wondered why on earth Dad would use such a bad piece of wood when he had plenty of clean timber, but Dad had chosen it specially. It gave the bunks a rustic old look. And when Mum hung up sheets all around, they made a very cool pirate ship. They worked hard all afternoon, in between having fun, scrambling all over the boxes and stirring Angel up in a frenzy by pretending to hunt for something. Then Dad called them back into the back room where he'd been finishing setting up the composting toilet. Milly guffawed when she saw it. The toilet looked like a throne. The big drum sat lengthwise on the floor, and Dad had constructed a platform above it, on which sat the toilet seat. You had to climb up 3 steep steps to reach it. "Bags first!" Milly shot up the stairs and perched on top of the closed toilet seat and looked down at the rest of the family. "It's so high!" Agreed Dad. "It wouldn't be any good for old people to use. You could have a nasty accident climbing up there, but it's the best I could do in this small space." "Well, it's a lot better than a long drop," said Mum. "Every time we needed to use the toilet at night in New Guinea, we'd have to wake Dad up, and he'd have to light a lantern and then take us through the bush to the long drop. Then he'd have to check that there were no snakes." "Horrible," said Ellie. Dad laughed. "Well, we have a flash toilet seat complete with a water flush. Just try not to use too much water when you flush it. We don't want it getting too wet inside the drum. And whatever you do, don't play with this." He showed them the long handle at the end of the drum. "This rotates the drum and aerates it. But if you don't leave it in the right position, the hole isn't positioned in the right place beneath the seat. And you can guess what that means." Milly pulled a face. She was glad that attending to the toilet was what Mum called a boy's job. Dad explained to them how he would add bark every few days and that after a few months they would have some good garden compost for the trees. The boys screwed up their noses. Dad winked at them. "But for you boys, there is a lovely little lemon tree that needs fertilising." He grinned at the look on their faces. As soon as they could, Sam and Jake and Millie slipped away and went feather hunting. It was almost dinner time when they got back to the barn with their treasures. Just then, Mum called out to everyone from the loft, "Okay, we're ready, come up and have a look." They all raced to the ladder. "Well, I'll be," exclaimed Dad. "It looks fantastic. Well done, team." The loft had been transformed. Ellie had helped Mum cover the wood floor with Axminster rugs, and then they'd made all the beds complete with colourful patchwork quilts. Shasta, the cat, had already claimed one as his own. A heavy blue curtain hung across the room, dividing the boys' area from the girls'. A few paintings hung on the wall, and a small bunch of daisies and buttercups were in a vase on a chest of drawers. Mum had lit her antique kerosene lantern and hung it from a nail in a rafter. She'd bought it for $3 at the dump shop a few years ago. Dad had groaned when she'd showed it to him. Mum was always coming home with wonderful finds. "My little dump rat," Dad called her. But when he found out that the lantern was over 100 years old, he thought maybe it wasn't too expensive after all. Now it glowed warmly in the loft and made the place look cosy and beautiful. Jake and Sam clapped their hands and leapt onto the bunk. "We're going to have to be very careful with any lanterns or candles," warned Dad. "This old place would go up like a bomb if there was a fire. So, no leaving a room if there's a lantern burning." He looked around the loft and frowned. "In fact, I'd rather we only use the camping lights until I can get some smoke alarms set up." Mum looked disappointed. "But it looks so cosy with the lantern going." "You and your lanterns, Rose," said Dad. "It'll look a bit more than cosy if one of them tips over." Then he relented. "Well, just for tonight, to celebrate." Millie felt glad that Dad was so careful. He'd positioned 2 of his special Oregon pine ladders at each end of the barn by the windows, just in case they ever needed to make an emergency escape. They were beautiful ladders. Dad had seen them on sale for just $10 each and had bought 2. Then he'd gone back and bought 8 more. A bargain, he'd told Mum. They were beautifully crafted and could extend to 8 metres. That night, the family sat outside on the porch and ate sausages from the barbecue. They watched a full golden moon rise slowly through a bank of pink clouds. "Red sky at night, shepherd's delight," said Dad. "It'll be a good day tomorrow. I think we'll try and get the water tank sorted, boys." The boys all groaned. There were plenty of other things they'd rather do. Dad grinned. "Aha, that's the pioneering spirit. What an adventure, eh?" That night they all went to bed early. Kate and Ellie lay in bed reading with torches. Sam put his bow and arrows and turkey feathers by his bed and then fell fast asleep. Mum whispered to Dad that she needed to keep reading, otherwise she'd start thinking about rats. Jacob lay in bed with his pirate hat on and started snoring, and Millie fell asleep and dreamed a wonderful dream of white horses and chariot races.